Hey, Nick from Velo Expert, and here is my review of the Argon 18 Nitrogen with the Ultegra Di2 group set. So I've been lucky enough to spend a week out here in Murcia at a friend's house, and it's given me a perfect opportunity to get some really good rides in on this. So we've done some fast rides, we've even done a local chain gang, big day out in the mountains, and I've also ridden it at home as well, so you can get my opinions on what it's like on our classically potholed bumpy roads. But on fast Spanish roads, this should be an absolute dream. So in this video, I'm going to go through the frame technology, how it rides, all the information you need like stack, reach, weight, all of those kind of things, and also how it compares to other bikes in this category. So stay tuned. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to the guys at Gorilla Firm Cycling based in Argon in the UK who sorted the bike out for me. It ran like a dream and it was perfect the whole way through testing, and as you can see they've got some beautiful kit in stock, so make sure you check them out. So here we are with the Argon 18 Nitrogen, which is quite clearly an aero race focused bike, but unlike some of the recent bikes, it's actually quite a good looking product. I think aero race bikes of late have been a good case of function over form, but this one's still a good looking bike. So very aggressive. It's taking advantage of all the latest UCR regulations, so a much deeper head tube is probably the first thing you notice when you see it in person, and that's paired with a really quite a deep and oversized fork. So from the front it's very narrow, but it has a truncated airfoil rear on here, so that means it's been flattened off on here, so as far as the wind is concerned it's actually a much deeper fork. Doesn't look like it's going to be the most comfortable, but we'll get into that in a minute. But it's really kind of a tale of two halves, this frame. So the front end is super aggressive looking, square profiles, beefy down tube, and matted to their own bottle cages. So these are aerodynamic cages, but crucially you can use a standard round bottle, which I think is a plus point. Purely aero bottles I'm sure are marginally quicker, but do have a big potential to be a pain in the arse in my eyes. So like that, that's a really nice feature. And the top tube kind of flattens off and tapers nicely into the back end. The down tube is large. It does have some interesting shaping on it. So this line across here, obviously as the wind's coming from this direction, it must be something to do with the wind flow off the front wheel and off the crown of the fork. And the down tube is nicely shaped to guide the wind around the cages. And then that leads down into this quite frankly enormous bottom bracket, which from this angle is actually higher than the 52 tooth chainring, which is quite something, and does go some way to explaining how this bike rides. So the back end on this continues on with the kind of quite squared off profiles, but it's much different to the front. So it's got this really low set of stays, which is really reminiscent of their track bikes. So the Canadian team used the Argon 18 track bikes in the Olympics, and they did really well on them. So the sprint frame in particular is really well loved. So, and this copies that line. It's also quite similar to the back end of the Colnago time trial bike, and you all know how Pagacci does on that. So that's a nice touch. From the front, it obviously clears the wind really well, but crucially, it gives you this much room here on the seat tube, which Argon 18 tell me gives this the same rear compliance as their Sun Pro, which is really impressive when you consider how beefy and chunky this thing is. And like I say, we'll go into the ride quality in a minute, but it's an impressive bit of engineering. So again, super beefy chainstays on here, all to do with power transfer, because this is a bike designed for going fast, so that makes a lot of sense. And again, yeah, it leads into this huge bottom bracket. So all in all, a really nicely detailed, clever bit of kit, and some really clever engineering gone in here. But crucially, I still think it looks really good as well. Now I appreciate function is important, but I don't know about you, I quite like a bike that looks nice too, so it's never a bad thing. This one is in their Harvest Moon colour, which is like a champagne colour, I guess, and they also do it in a teal, which I think looks fantastic actually. This looks good, that teal definitely looks better. So I've been lucky enough to ride the medium in the Nitrogen, which, unlike the Krypton I was riding, fits me perfectly. I was somewhat in between sizes on the other bikes, but on this it seems to be absolutely perfect. So stack on this is 555, reach is 392, and for perspective, that's a bit bigger than a 54 centimetre from Cervelo, and 10 mil lower in the stack than the 56. So if you're used to riding one of those, that kind of give you an idea of where this is at with sizing. Clearance on here for 34mm tyres. Obviously I'm running the 30mm Vittoria Corsas that it comes specced with. Because I tend to ride bikes, you know, with what they're sent with, but also it's designed around this tyre and wheel setup. So although it does have clearance for bigger tyres, for optimum performance, this is the way you should run it. So that's what I've done. So some really clever details on here. So one thing that I think is really worth mentioning, and something a lot of brands forget, and a lot of people won't notice on the spec sheet, is this actually uses enduro bearings in the headset. So that might seem like a bit of a kind of minor detail to start with, but it does mean that you're going to have to service this headset a lot less. Now, as it's got fully internal cable routing, stripping it down can be a labour intensive process. So that is a big plus point, and well done Argon. That's something I really like to see. So again, like I say, when you're purchasing a bike you won't notice it, but when you come around to servicing it after 2 years, you certainly will. And the fact that it's lasting a lot longer means you don't have to have such an expensive service at each point. Now, if you're not sure why a service would be so expensive, basically because all of the cables go in through the headset. To replace these two bearings, you have to not only disengage the bar like you would do normally, but you often have to replace the hoses too. And it turns into a big job, as you'll have heard many mechanics moan about. So yeah, very well done there, Argon. T47 bottom bracket on this, which I like to see. So T47 is essentially, enables you to use like a BB30 axle, but it's threaded instead of press fit, which gives it better alignment issues and longevity. Press fit when done properly is fantastic, but it can be hit and miss. So T47, really good feature. And as you know, I'm quite fussy about handlebars, and the ATTEN CHB-01 on this bike is a really good one actually. It's something I really like. It's very comfortable. So we'll start at the tops. They're not too deep, they're not too aggressive, and they're flat along the back, but they've got a nice angle on top here, so they taper back towards your wrist, which is good. I found them very comfortable, and they have a 3-degree flare. So as you'll see from there, they flare from here to here by 3 degrees, and what that means is when your hands in the drops, hands are here on the drops, you're less likely to bang your forearm on this part of the bar. So really comfortable when you're on the drops. Now, being in the drops isn't as aerodynamic as being on the tops, but I find for descending and going quick, I much prefer to have my hands down there. Standard FSA, semi-ergonomic, classic drops. So yeah, really comfy bar setup. These come in a 38 on the medium bike. You might think you need narrower, but I've actually found that with the levers angled in slightly as they are here, it gives you a really good, efficient position that isn't uncomfortable, even on longer climbs. Sometimes the super narrow bars don't feel great for me on long climbing sections, but there's no issue as such with this, which is impressive. And obviously they're aerodynamic too. In terms of numbers, they reckon that this is 24 watts faster than the Sun Pro. So one thing that I do need to talk about, and it's quite an interesting thing on this bike, are these wheels. So these are the Scope 6A, which are their 65mm deep aero wheel set. Now, the reason these need talking about more so than other wheels is these are designed specifically to work with this bike. So these are 1.3mm wider than those as standard. Now that's something that the Argon engineers have worked with the guys at Scope with, and this is optimised for this fork. Now that doesn't mean to say you can't use other wheels, it just means it's faster with these ones in it, which I think is quite, if you're looking at this kind of bike, that's going to be super important detail for you. Cycling News tested this in the wind tunnel and it did okay, but not as exceptionally well as you would have thought, and that's because they ran other wheels in it. So these are also designed to run the Vittoria Corsa in a 30mm, which is no problem. I absolutely love the Corsas. I'd prefer the cotton casing ones, and obviously a Tamil, because Tamils always look cool. They'll be marginally quicker, but in a 30mm, I absolutely love them. They're comfy, fast, and all those things. They're not the cheapest, but then this is a performance bike, so I don't really think that matters too much. These on the standard nitrogen are slightly different to the ones on the Pro. So the Pro has the 6A Plus, which has that kind of fish scale sidewall to the rim, which is more aerodynamic, and they also have a ceramic bearing. But I'll be honest, I don't really think these slow me down too much, and for the significant price saving, it's something I'm quite happy to live with. Groupset on this bike is the Ultegra Di2, which is very good, but a little bit boring if I'm honest. There is a SRAM Force version available that comes in at 7.3, so a bit of a jump up. It's like an extra 550 quid, but I must admit, I think I would go for it. I mean, the Ultegra is fantastic. It works really well. There's nothing wrong with it. It's faultless functionally. I just find it a bit lackluster. Prefer the look of the SRAM Force. I think it's better finished and it looks more in keeping with a high-end bike. But also, I prefer the wider gear ratios. So this one has a 1033 on the back, sorry, 1134 on the back, sorry, and a 5236 on the front, which is perfectly good. You know, it gave me a really good climbing ratio for getting up some big hills yesterday. But I would have rather have had the 10 sprocket for the extra speed that you can get on this bike. So yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with the Ultegra Groupset. It works absolutely flawlessly. I just find it a bit boring in comparison. There is a 105 version of this bike available as well, which comes in at 5.2, which I think is exceptionally good value for such a high-end frame. But that does have cheaper wheels in it. So if you've already got a set of really deep aero wheels, maybe the 105 Di2 is the one for you. So here we are, just north of Murcia, on a big old proper mountain climb. Not really where you'd think the Nitrogen would shine, but actually I think it shows just how versatile modern aero bikes are. You know, I would be better off on a lighter climbing bike, the Hydrogen, I believe it is. I'm sure that'd be better, especially on these kind of bumpy proper mountain roads. But this is far from holding me back, which is very surprising. You know, as a true aero bike, it does all the things you'd expect a true aero bike to do. But the fact that it's quite comfy on terrain like this, it has been all day, it's a pleasant surprise. I think part of that's down to the kind of taller stack at the front. Also, the wider tyres obviously help with comfort. And they've done a good job of muting vibrations. Don't get me wrong, it's not the magic carpet ride I had on the Krypton, but there is a bit more flex in the back end than you would think. And despite how it looks, it's actually a surprisingly comfortable bike. I mean, it's an imposing looking thing. I think it looks fantastic actually, but it doesn't beat you up anywhere near as much as you think. Which is a very, very pleasant surprise. So this climb, sort of stuff I really like to ride, like narrow, rural, bumpy, twisty. As you can see, stunning views. And on older aero bikes, it's been a bit of an uncomfortable day. But actually, it's been brilliant. And it absolutely flies downhill. And I don't mean just in straight lines. It handles beautifully. There was a descent we did earlier where, generally speaking, when I get to about 40 miles an hour, that's where I'm comfortable at. I don't really want to push much past that. I do sometimes, but generally speaking, that's where you start to rely more on bottle than how the bike feels. But on this, so planted. Just kept urging me to go faster and faster. It was unbelievable, really. I haven't ridden anything like that ever, I don't think. There's normally a point where a bike starts to feel sketchy, but I couldn't find it on this. And I'll show you in some video later on. I was going as quick as I could. So yeah, very, very, very impressed actually. Now, again, much like when I was talking about the R5, I don't want to call this budget, but it's really well priced, especially the 105 version. So like, you know, when you're riding 10 and 12 grand bikes, they're all fantastic, but sometimes the lower spec stuff kind of cuts corners. It doesn't feel like it with this. This is the standard frame, not the Pro. So this is the heavier one in theory, but it still comes in at 8 kilos, which is more than respectable. I mean, like most of the Pro guys riding the classics, their bikes are all kind of between 7.2 and 8 kilos. So perfectly respectable, especially when you're considering the depth of the wheels, which are also worth a mention. I don't normally like really deep wheels, especially on the mountains, because you sometimes get gusts of wind, but also, I want to say centrifugal force, but Any engineers in the chat, please correct me if I'm wrong. Find a really deep wheel doesn't turn in the same way. I mean, you can test that theory out yourself by spinning a front wheel in your hands. A narrow rim will always tip over easier than a much deeper one. And normally when there's lots of corners, I like a front end that reacts. But this does, it's very stable. It does handle really well, which is unusual because normally you get one or the other. It's quite a balancing act to make something that corners well. And, you know, not as quickly as some bikes are ridden. Certainly no slouch. And it's not confusing like the BMC that I rode, which had slack geometry and fell fast because it was a twitchy. This isn't like that. This is much more stable. Oh, look at that view. Do love a sketchy old bridge with big gaps and a cliff. Oh. The only thing I don't like, which you might have just heard then a second ago, was that freewheel. It's pretty obnoxious. I mean, don't really notice their full speed, but when you're just riding along, it's a bit annoying. I think it's exacerbated by the huge deep section rims and really boxy frame, which makes it quite a loud thing. Yeah. This dirt road, because I've ridden this today already, really surprised me as well. Lots of corners, potholes, bumpy bits. It's not smooth, but big change line. Had loads of control. It's just really impressed with it. Now, this bike felt really good on the mountains yesterday, just north of Murcia. But today, I'm on the kind of flatter roads, closer to where I'm staying, just south of the city. And it's on these kind of roads where this bike really shines. So they're kind of quite open. It's quite like the plains, basically. It's quite agricultural. There's lots of orange groves and whatnot around here. And it's this kind of rolling terrain and flatter roads where this really excels. It's super fast. Now, every aero bike I've ridden before feels quick, you know, like from the original S5s and onwards, but they're all quite compromised in other ways. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like a really good all-rounder, which happens to be really fast. Not as comfy as some other bikes, but it's not very good. So, I'd say yesterday's ride was over 5 hours. Don't get me wrong, I was pretty knackered, but no more than normal. So, very impressive. But on this stuff, when you're really pushing on, it's where this bike absolutely flies. So I've been out on the chain gang this morning, which kind of ended up just being a 2-up between me and one other guy, called Cherry. Had a great ride, really enjoyed it, proper smash fest. But this thing absolutely flew. It's been a long time since I've ridden a bike it felt like I could have done with bigger gears. In fact, I can't really remember the last time that happened. So, you know, I was sat in 5211 doing 60 plus K and thinking, you know what, I could do with more gears, which is insane. This thing is absolutely like a rocket. And, quite surprisingly, very good in crosswinds. So it's quite blustery here. Can't really get a gauge of it now because the wind's slightly behind me. But in some of the other videos you might see, you can hear the wind. It's super strong. And although the bike was moving in the wind, it was no worse than anything else I've ridden and no worse than the other bikes that people are on. And 40% of the group were on tarmac SL8s, which is, you know, basically the benchmark pro bike. And it was affecting them just as much as me. So despite its slab-sided head tube, deep forks and massive wheels, you know, these are 65mm deep, it does handle really well in crosswinds. You know, if you're a very light rider and you sit quite far back and you don't have much weight over the front end, then you're probably going to struggle in a crosswind on this, but then you're likely to struggle on most things. So, and this probably isn't the bike you're after, but yeah, very impressive how stable it was in such a condition. I was concerned on the way out to the chain gang that I was going to maybe be a bit dangerous on this because there's quite a few open sections where there was a strong crosswind. But no problem at all. Very impressive. And this has like a really pronounced lift-off sensation. So whenever you ride an aero bike, there's a thing that it's quite hard to describe. I describe it as a lift-off. So Just let that wagon go past. I don't mean lift off as in like a rocket, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and take off. What I mean is when you get to a certain speed, the aerodynamics become more evident and you almost back off the power for the same speed. So you don't really notice it on a bike that's not aerodynamic. You don't suddenly feel like you're hitting a wall. But on something like this, once you get over kind of 28 to 30k an hour, it maintains that speed fantastically well, which is what you don't get on a non-aero bike. You know, like on this road like this, where it's fast and flowing, once you go over a certain speed, what you're going to do now, hopefully you can still hear me in the wind, but you just continue topping out. It's a strange sensation, but it's the covering distance on rolling terrain, it really rips. You know, there's been a few bits of road like this, which kind of up and down and up and down, and you just hold speed so well, particularly over 28k. Like I say, it's just, I like to describe it as lift off, but it's the best way of thinking of it. Where you just go faster for the same effort. I'm not a bit small that everybody needs an aero bike. CDA matters. A lot of that stuff generally leaves it quite cold, to be honest, especially on off-road and stuff. But on this bike, it's unbelievable. It really is. Like, it's so fast. There you go. Like, you might be able to feel like I'm now doing 24k an hour. And it's just cutting through it just flows along. It's so good. It's an addictive sensation. I'll be really honest. I'll be quite sad to give this bike back. I've had a great week riding on it. I was a little worried at first. I thought it might be a bit too harsh. I thought it kind of beat me up over 4 or 5 days. And then I was a little bit worried about the crosswinds, but it really surprised me. It's absolutely a piece of bike. Is this the right bike for everyone? Of course not. You know, like some Pro probably suits a lot more people. Or Krypton actually is probably the best bike for those people because that's fast and drops in. But if you want to go quick, if you want to race, if you've got a triathlon that you want to do, and you don't follow a tri-bike, or you just want to smash your mates in a clay gag, which is, to be honest, all I'll be doing on it. Really struggling to come out with any more superlatives, to be honest. It's just been such a great thing to ride, especially on fast roads like this. I must admit, on my first ride back in Lincolnshire, I loved it for about 40% of the ride. There were quite a few bits on really badly potholed roads where I was struggling. But part of that, I think, is because I had the tyre pressure too high. You know, that was my first ride. And I was running 62, 63 PSI. Kind of settled on 56 here. And that feels perfect. It just takes the edge off a lot of the bumps without losing any of its speed. I did a lot of these descents blind, so I prefer to go for something for slightly lower pressure, so I've got a bit more grip and predictability in the corners. And it's been fantastic. I'd run it tubeless at home. And once I wore these tyres out, I'd definitely go for the Corsa Pros with the more supple casings, but as a bike out of the box, it's unusual that you could race on something straight away, and I genuinely think you could on this. You know, I've made no changes to it. In fact, I didn't even change the saddle height from the previous tester. So, yeah, very, very impressive. So, fellow expert, final verdict on the Argon 18 Nitrogen. Well, it's been a surprise actually. It does all the things you expect it to do. I mean, you only got to look at it to kind of appreciate that it's going to be fast. It's an out and out aero road bike, but what surprised me most is how comfortable and user friendly it is. So as you'd expect with its enormous head tube, deep fork, really deep wheels, it's always going to be fast in a straight line. But actually it handles super well too, and it's reasonably comfortable too. It's more comfortable than any bike that looks like that should be. It looks like it's going to be super uncompromising and very, very stiff, and it certainly is stiff, but it's not uncomfortable. It's you know, I did a 5-hour ride on it and I was no more beaten up than I'd normally be, and I still wanted to go fast even at the end of it. So you know, it's it covers terrain incredibly well. Corners really nicely, handles like when we were riding through and off earlier, really predictable. You know, handles perfectly for a race bike. It's also pretty good value as well. So 6,700 quid is never cheap. I'm not going to pretend it is, but comparatively, this is really good value. You get full superbike performance, but not at a superbike price, which is, you know, very, very commendable. It's also got some nice features on there that are really user friendly. So things like the T47 bottom bracket, and especially that enduro bearing headset, which I think is a really nice touch and something that might get missed by a lot of people, but I think is definitely worth mentioning, because for consumers, that is a big bonus. Ultegra Groupset was great. It worked faultlessly. I find it a bit boring, but bar that, it was absolutely faultless. I personally would prefer the SRAM Force, but it is also £550 more. So again, that's up to you. There is a lower spec version, which I said before, which comes in at 5,200 quid. So if you've got some deep wheels, it might be worth looking at that. But just keep in mind that this bike does test faster with these wheels and these tyres, which have been absolutely fantastic as well, by the way. So yeah, my final verdict is this is an absolutely incredible bike, and one that was full of surprises, and one I'll be really sad to give back, actually. So thanks to Alex and the guys at Argon 18 for hooking me up with this. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you like this review and you want to see more of this stuff, then please like and subscribe, and check out the rest of the stuff on my channel. Cheers, guys.